বৰঠাকুৰ IAS একাডেমি প্ৰস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা
Hello everyone, this is Funny. Welcome to Bhurthakur IAS Academy. This is our daily Hindu analysis class for 25th September 2021. Let us begin with the first article for today. So ICMR stops use of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine for COVID-19 treatment. So before going into this article, let us get a little bit of basic understanding of what they are saying here. So what is the role of ICMR in India's response to COVID-19? Right, ICMR has been entrusted with the job of being the national task force for COVID-19. So since the pandemic began, ICMR has been releasing guidelines consistently and frequently as to what should be the treatment protocol for treating COVID-19 patients, post-treatment also, what are the necessary steps they need to take to prevent the black fungus infection or any other side effects of the treating of COVID-19 patients. Two, they have been consistently updating the medical procedures, the medicines to be used, the protocols to be followed, and as I said, they have been releasing guidelines since the beginning of COVID-19. So from time to time, they have been updating the drugs that are needed to be administered or given to COVID-19 patients by the doctors who are treating those patients. Now they have come out with a new guideline where they have dropped the use of drugs such as ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Two important drugs, not because of their ability to either treat or not treat COVID-19, but because of America. This drug gained prominence because in one of his speeches, President Trump during his presidency suggested that people with COVID-19 can take hydroxychloroquine. After that, we saw the controversy that raised, and because of that, irrespective of whether it treated COVID-19 patients or not, that went to the background, and the fact that Mr. Trump suggested it made it famous and controversial at the same time, with irrespective of its efficiency or efficacy. Now, as far as the ivermectin, again, because of the discussion or the disclosure in America, where there are two camps that are divided over the use of ivermectin to treat COVID-19 patients, where you have seen one side of the discussion taking over the fact that ivermectin has been used in animals for deworming in horses or whatever it is. On the other hand, you have a group saying that ivermectin is better than hydroxychloroquine. So despite that, India didn't have much of that, thank God for that, but India didn't have that kind of a controversy in regards to both of these drugs. Nonetheless, both hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin have been used in India for certain cases. It depends on the doctor who is treating you, and depend on the patient condition, these drugs were being given to those patients. Now, in an updated guideline, after revising clinical guidance for management of adult COVID-19 patients, the ICMR had decided to drop both of these drugs off the suggested or guided list. Now, these are revised guidelines, but though they have dropped both hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these revised guidelines also suggest the use of drugs such as remdesivir and tocilizumab. These two drugs are to be used only in specific condition. Again, remdesivir gained kind of importance or kind of celebrity status. I know I am saying that word in the wrong sense, but nonetheless, everybody knows what remdesivir is, irrespective of not knowing what its role is in treating COVID-19. Nonetheless, you have remdesivir and tocilizumab that are being again suggested for COVID-19 patients, but under specific conditions only. Now, this is the new guidelines. The reason that we are discussing is we want to know what is the role of ICMR, right? To recap, ICMR is the designated national task force, right? It is the premier authority or premier guiding authority for India's COVID-19 response since the pandemic began. Okay. Now, let us do a little bit of understanding of what remdesivir is, where it originated from, and what is the current scenario in regards to which countries are using remdesivir. So the first thing to note here is remdesivir was not intended for the use case or for the treatment of COVID-19. The intent behind the developing of remdesivir was to treat hepatitis C. Now it was manufactured in 2014, though it was primarily directed towards treating Ebola by a US biotechnology firm called Gilead Sciences. Again, Gilead holds the patent for this tablets or this medicine. This is being manufactured in India through licenses. So the company that holds patent is called Gilead Sciences, which is a US based company. But later on, what happened was, after scientists found certain advantages of this drug in treating respiratory related viruses, they have been since used to treat both MERS, that is Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, and SARS. Both are again kind of belongs to the family of coronavirus. So there is the basis as to why you found remdesivir being suggested to treat COVID-19 virus or SARS-CoV-2 virus, because they were used or deployed successfully in treating viruses that originated from coronavirus. That is what the remdesivir origin lies at. Initially started for hepatitis B or discovered for developed for treating hepatitis C, then deployed or used to treat Ebola in particularly African countries. Later on, they found that it can effectively act against the coronavirus family, and they have used it to treat both MERS and SARS outbreaks. Later on, since the basis is already existing, they kind of used it to treat COVID-19 also. So the thing with remdesivir is it comes in vials, it comes in liquid form, it has to be injected into the vein directly through an injection. You saw how people struggled to get remdesivir vials. You saw the black market thing happening in India, where the government had to come in and intervene in that, and where the government took over the control on supply of the control over the supply of the medicine, where they started distributing the medicine from district headquarters, meaning collector's office. If a what do you call a doctor's note being produced as proof. So we all went through that. Now again, it is administered via injection into a vein. So as far as the status of remdesivir is concerned, during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was approved for emergency use to treat COVID-19 in and around 50 countries. As far as the World Health Organization standing is concerned, initially they were very suggestive of using it, but later on in an updated guidelines in November of 2020, they included a conditional recommendation against the use of remdesivir for the for the treatment of COVID-19 patients. As far as India is concerned, remdesivir is allowed, but for only in specific conditions. So this is about remdesivir. This is the drug thing. As far as the tocilizumab is, or tocilizumab, however you pronounce it, please forgive me for the pronunciation, is concerned, it is also a similar thing, but let us I'll give you a little bit of history of it too. So as far as the tocilizumab is concerned, it is an immunosuppressant drug. Remember, remdesivir is an antiviral drug. Tocilizumab is a immunosuppressant drug. It is primarily used to treat arthritis, right? You had rheumatoid arthritis. This is primarily given to those people to help in immunosuppressants. Now, why is this drug important? So the problem is sometimes in certain cases what happens is your body starts acting against your own defense system, your own cells. They tend to damage your own body cells. So in those cases, these drugs are used as they work against a protein called IL-6 protein. What is this IL-6 protein? This IL-6 protein plays a key role in mounting a cytokine response, right? So the cytokine response is something when your immune system, you have your immune system, right? It thinks your own body cells are a threat to your health, and they start attacking your own cells, right? In the sense, the immune system that you have starts attacking the body's own cells, because this happens in certain cases after a virus infects this body. In certain cases your immune system kicks into overdrive, and instead of destroying the foreign virus in your body, they not only destroy that virus, in the process they end up destroying your own body cells. In those cases, this IL-6 protein comes into play and they protect your body and its cells by directly protecting your cells. So these drugs help in that or aid in that response, right? So these repurposed drugs, right, they are supposed to stop the self-damaging cytokine response, right, particularly in COVID-19 infections. There were certain cases in COVID-19 patients where their body was kicking into overdrive and they were ending up destroying body's own cells. So these drugs were suggested in those cases to prevent that cytokine response. What is the protein? The protein is called IL-6 protein. The important thing is, this drug is not manufactured in India. It is sourced from a Swiss pharmaceutical company, right? I think it was called Hoffman or something. Please do look into it. But it is not manufactured in India. It is sourced from a Swiss company. I think it is called Hoffman. So this is tocilizumab and remdesivir drugs. Both are allowed for COVID-19 treatment in India, but in specific conditions. Tocilizumab is an immunosuppressant drug, right? It works against a protein called IL-6 protein. This is used to suppress the self-damaging response called cytokine response in severe COVID-19 patients. Ministry of Defense signs 22,000 crore deal with Airbus. So yesterday we discussed about Arjuna Mk1A main battle tank, where Indian Army is poised to get 118 latest version main battle tanks in India in the next coming few years. Similarly, Ministry of Defense on Friday signed a deal which is estimated to be worthing around 22,000 crore with Airbus Defense and Space SA Spain, which is an European Union company. So it is a conglomerate of Airbus along with some European Union companies for 56 C-295 MW transport aircraft. So this is again part of modernizing our Indian Air Force. On the left of the slide, you are seeing the aging Avro aircraft that are being replaced with the right side new C-295 MW transport aircraft. So on the left you are seeing the Avro aircraft which were procured in 1960s. On the right, the new 56 295 are to be inducted into Indian Air Force in the next coming few years. So why is this deal significant? It is significant on two fronts. One, Indian Air Force will get new transport. Indian military will get new transport aircraft, replacing old and aging aircraft, right? Particularly the Avros, which is very hard to maintain because of lack of spare parts. We'll learn why spare parts are important. Second, this is a big boost to Make in India initiative, that is Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. Now let us look into what the deal is, what are the specialities of this particular deal that Indian Ministry of Defense signed with Airbus. So the first outstanding thing out of this deal is, so of the 56 aircraft, 16 will be delivered in flyaway condition from Spain. So of the 56 that we have ordered, 16 will be built in European Union, particularly in Spain. See, the company that we are ordering, Airbus, right? So the little bit of background, not important for exam, but know this. The aircraft that we are talking about here, the C-295 MW, was actually developed in European Union through multiple conglomerate companies. Multiple individual companies that formed as a conglomerate. Later on, Airbus overtook that aircraft and they now began selling those aircraft under Airbus badge. Like it's like simple. That is the simplest thing that I could explain. But nonetheless, these aircraft, right, you have 56 that were ordered, but 16 will be delivered in flyaway condition, meaning they will be manufactured and delivered to India within 48 months of the signing of agreement. But out of after that, after the 16 are delivered, the rest will be manufactured in India by Tata Group. This is where the importance of this deal comes into play. So before going into that, the C-295 has 5 to 10 capacity, 5 to 10 tons capacity. It can be used as a tactical transport for up to 71 troops to 50 paratroopers. Paratroopers are known special commandos who jump out of aeroplanes. You can see in the picture where they are jumping out of the back door of this C-295 in a training exercise somewhere in the world. So the second thing is it can operate in inaccessible areas. It doesn't need a paved airstrip. It can take off and land in unprepared airstrips. Where do these use cases are used? These can be used or deployed in border areas, particularly in Ladakh region where you cannot have long airstrips because of mountains. Tactical advantage is it can carry troops, it can carry heavy equipment. Not only that, it doesn't need airstrips, it doesn't need paved airstrips. It can land in unprepared and take off in unprepared airstrips, particularly short ones too. It doesn't need the full length, it can take off and land in short unprepared airstrips. So this is the functionality of this aircraft. Now let us come to why it is significant. Now this is the first of its kind project where a total military aircraft will be manufactured in India under technology transfer by the private sector. So, till now, whatever the deals you had for any military technology has been through public sector. Private companies from outside come into India. Indian government initiates a contract for so and so number of aircraft, so and so number of helicopters, so and so number of jets. That private foreign company will tie up with either Hindustan Aeronautical Limited or Bharat Heavy Electronic Limited or any DRDO, any other public sector entity. When it comes to aircraft, it has always been Hindustan Aeronautical Limited. So for the first time, a foreign company comes into India, Indian Army or Indian government initiates a contract with them. And now, instead of a public sector company manufacturing those or fulfilling those agreements, a private sector company will work alongside with a foreign company in delivering the contract. So as I said, this is the first of its kind project where a complete military aircraft will be manufactured in India under transfer technology by a private sector company. Not only this, this is the first time that an entire aircraft will be manufactured privately or by a private company, Indian private company in India. And what is that company? That company is Tata Advanced Systems Limited. So 11 years or ago, Tata Group and Airbus partnered to start their program for aircraft, particularly not only aircraft but in defense and in commercial sense. Airbus Group not only manufactures military aircrafts, they are most known for helicopters and commercial aircrafts, right? You have transport aircraft for civilians and non-civilians, right? You have transport and civilian use cases, but mostly they are known for that, helicopters also. Now they are getting into military transport vehicles too, meaning military transport aircraft too. As far as the location is concerned, nothing is concrete yet. We don't know, but out of 56 that we have ordered, 16 will be flown directly from Spain. Later, the rest would be manufactured in India by Tata Advanced Systems Limited. So this procurement was cleared by Cabinet Committee 2 weeks back, but the deal was signed recently, right? As I said, why is this program very important? Let me give you an example. India currently operates close to 40 or 45 to 50 Mirage 2000 aircrafts, fighter jets. Recently, Indian Army placed an agreement or came to agreement with a company in France to purchase old and decommissioned Mirage 2000 fighter jets from France for similar amount, I think. But why was Indian Air Force forced to buy some 30 to 40 or 20 to 30 decommissioned Mirage 2000 aircrafts from some French company? The reason is simple: spare parts. The Mirage 2000s were manufactured by a company called Dassault Aviations. Remember Dassault? Whoever the company, it is the same company that is delivering Rafale fighter jets to India. The same company manufactured the Mirage 2000s also. But since the countries that bought Mirage 2000s have completely decommissioned out of service, right? French Air Force also decommissioned their aircrafts. Since there is no demand for them, they closed that manufacturing supply line. Along with it, they are also closing the spares manufacturing unit also. So what happens after 5 or 6 years is, if an Indian Air Force Mirage 2000 needs an spare part, they have to make it for it. The spare parts wouldn't be available readily, but instead they have to be manufactured on order. So because of that, the price of the spare part goes up, making it untenable to maintain the Mirage 2000 fleet in Indian Air Force. So what Indian Air Force is doing is, Indian Air Force went to this vendor and said, give us all your old Mirage 2000s so that we can break them into pieces and use them as spare parts. So let us say an Mirage 2000 in Indian Air Force gets a wing damage. The wing of that aircraft is damaged. So instead of going to that manufacturer and saying, please build us a wing, there would be Mirage 2000 wings available, because we are stripping down old Mirage 2000s for spare parts to reduce the price, to increase the life of those aircrafts. So that is a big issue. When you have an aircraft or a technology in your hand, a physical product in your hand, particularly any military instrument or product, right, device, it needs maintenance, it needs spare parts in its life cycle. Just because we didn't have the manufacturing line or manufacturing capacity in India for Mirage 2000s, we had to rely on other companies for spare parts, maintenance, and assembly, testing, and manufacturing. Now with this project, what happens is, 16 we are getting from Spain, but what happens with the rest? The rest will be manufactured in India, meaning from start to finish, everything will be manufactured in India. So 50-60 years down the lane, when the C295MW aircrafts need spare parts, need maintenance, right, the Indian company, the Tata company, which has been manufacturing them, can supply those spare parts for very cheap price. So the life cycle of these aircrafts immediately go up, because the spares are available domestically. We don't need to import them. We don't need to manufacture them specifically in other countries. Even if a spare part needs to be manufactured specifically, it can be done domestically, reducing the cost some 5 to 6 times. So the program that we are currently initiating, the deal that we signed, involves not only the development of complete industrial ecosystem from manufacturing, assembly, testing the platform, delivering the platform to Indian Air Force, post-delivery life cycle maintenance. So if an aircraft crosses its 4,000 or 5,000 flying hours time limit, it comes to the hangar, this gets tested, this gets stripped down, everything is quality checked, then again it is reassembled, and then it goes for its missions. So because of this, our domestic aviation manufacturing sector will get an immense boost. This will reduce our reliance on imports. This will give a greater scope for export of these aircrafts to other countries, because This is not only being offered to India but also other countries. So once this project succeeds in India, Airbus can decide to wholly shift its manufacturing line or production line to India, where Tata will produce every aircraft or every variant of C295 MW. Now, remember the biggest, as I said, MRO, right? So one of the biggest offsets or outcomes of this deal is the setting up of a service facility, that is an MRO facility. MRO facility is nothing but a maintenance, repair and overhaul facility, right? In these, this gives a greatest impetus to the domestic servicing capabilities. So again, the spare parts come into play, the maintenance, the time for maintenance, the easiness or the simplicity in repairing those aircraft comes into play. So these are the biggest advantages of having this manufacturing line in our country. Right, this will certainly benefit, as right they are going to completely build or set up India's own D-level servicing facility, MRO facility, and this will serve this fleet. Not only Indian Air Force is going to order this aircraft. Once this gets into service, you can see Indian Army placing some aircraft. You can see Coast Guard ordering similar aircrafts to its fleet. So you are going to see multiple other agencies in India ordering the similar aircraft. So these are the advantages of having our own manufacturing line in our own country. As I said, this is a big boost to government's Atmanirbhar Abhiyan, because it gives an opportunity for Indian private sector to enter into a very intensive, technology intensive sector, and again highly competitive aviation industry, and we can compete with the world now, because once Tata starts manufacturing, in order to manufacture these aircrafts, it has to get international accreditation. Now once you get that certificates, you get that recognition, these domestic companies now can supply parts to international market, again boost domestic sector. That are the advantages of it. To give you a recap of Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, was launched in 2015. The idea is Make in India. This is an initiative that is focused on encouraging companies to manufacture in India, right? Intended to boost domestic manufacturing sector and also augment foreign investment in the country, because one of the tenets of Atmanirbhar Abhiyan is to attract FDIs into India. Several initiatives have been launched, particularly Make in India campaign, you have Startup India campaign, you have Skill India campaign, Digital India campaign. What was the goal behind all of these things? Is to make India the #1 destination for global FDI. So since this initiative launched, the government releases yearly updates. Since that, we can effectively say that FDIs in various sectors have gone up significantly, particularly in manufacturing sector has also gone up. But despite all of these initiatives, Atmanirbhar Abhiyan has been facing some sort of an hindrances or obstacles in its way to achieve its full abilities in the way of certain our own legal and our own procedural issues, red tapeism. That is what we tend to call it, right? Whatever the grand initiatives that were launched through Make in India initiative, they tend to have long periods of gestation, meaning they take long time to take off and roll, and we have to be careful when we assess such kinds of initiatives. Nonetheless, FDIs have significantly gone up, and this deal that we have discussed just now is certainly a step in that direction. We need more of it. We need certain reforms in Make in India campaign or Atmanirbhar initiative, right? We need to make certain reforms in our procedures also, because we need to make a process of leasing land simpler. Land acquisition should be made easier. We need to reform labor laws. Again, labor laws, though reformed, we need to adopt more business friendly strategies to ensure the success of Atmanirbhar Abhiyan. So that is why this deal is significant. So moving on to the next article, China's central bank rules all crypto transactions to be illegal. So it seems that China has finally knocked the final nail in the coffin of cryptocurrencies in China, because the Chinese central bank on Friday announced that all financial transactions, including cryptocurrencies, are illegal. So this is kind of the final nail in the coffin for cryptocurrency in country. So they were doing this because they were stating that there is a lot of corruption that has been taking, a lot of illegal transactions that were being carried out under cryptocurrencies or through cryptocurrencies, and this was again, they were stating that cryptocurrencies were bringing in volatile they are volatile currencies, and they were kind of hedging their bets against legal tender, that is Chinese yuan. Now again, cryptocurrencies are massive in Western countries, Asian not so much. You have little bit of success of cryptocurrencies in Asian region, but majority of cryptocurrencies come from Western sphere. Now, they have deemed that any virtual currency related business activity to be illegal. They were saying that in the recent years, trading of Bitcoin and other virtual currencies have become widespread, disrupting economy and financial order, giving rise to money laundering, illegal fundraising, fraud, pyramid schemes, and other illegal and criminal activities. Again, this cryptocurrency crackdown was expected, but nonetheless, this is the final thing. Cryptocurrency is officially dead in China. As far as India is concerned, still the door is open. In India, there is a bit of confusion. See, we don't want the cryptocurrency, right? In essence, we don't want it, meaning the regulators don't want it, but they want the underlying technology, that is the blockchain technology. So this is where a lot of confusion happens. So you cannot separate cryptocurrency from blockchain technology. There is an interlink that exists, and that is why you see the success of cryptocurrencies around the world. Again, we are stuck in a conundrum. We don't have clarity, though we are inching towards launching our own cryptocurrency in the form of an e-rupee or a digital rupee, not e-rupee. E-rupee is the voucher that was launched recently, but nonetheless a digital rupee. Again, cryptocurrency is still a lot of limbo in India, but as far as China is concerned, they have said no more new cryptocurrencies for us. So I just wanted to update you as what is the regional standing of cryptocurrencies in Asia, particularly China. In this regard, we seem to be following along the Chinese footsteps. So we have to wait and see how Indian government is going to react. Thank you. Stay safe. Namaste.
বৰঠাকুৰ IAS একাডেমি প্ৰস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা।
বৰঠাকুৰ IAS একাডেমি।